And host has already introduced the platform to our speaker. And we are in this series wherein emerging infection and emerging and re-emerging infections are being addressed. And I distinctly remember last week, the first slide of the Dr. Kathleen, she has compared appropriately the antimicrobial resistance to a COVID pandemic. I like that slide, and it's very, very, very green. In my memories, it was a very wonderful comparison of this COVID pandemic with antimicrobial resistance. The only thing is, COVID-19 has come only recently, abruptly, in a fast way. The antimicrobial resistance pandemic is slowly eating the mankind. This is what she gave a very clear message, and even the regulating agency, World Health Organization, has described this as a major global health problem. When we say global health problem, it requires a global solution, as obviously. And we all know, this antimicrobial resistance, antibiotic resistance, ever since where students even earlier, pretty known entity. And there was a euphoria during 15 and 60s when newer molecules were getting described. We will be thinking that you'll be always ahead of pathogens. But now the pipeline for these new antibiotics or antimicrobial agents is almost running dry. And we are really alarmed by this problem. And even the World Health Organization also has put forth a strategy of combating antimicrobial resistance, not recently, almost 2 decades back. But in spite of this, the problem continues to exist, continues to aggravate. So we are here we have a known person in the field, who is in charge of the infectious diseases in the prestigious Apollo Hospital. Chennai is over here to share his thoughts and experiences on the topic. And at this point of time, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Abdul Ghafoor and all the other participants from outside on behalf of our Honorable Chairman and the management at large and the university at large. And on behalf of our AVMC, I welcome you, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor. Thank you very much. Deepa, over to you, please now.
Thank you, sir, for a brief introduction of the topic today. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor. He is a consultant and adjunct professor in infectious diseases at the famous Apollo Hospitals, Chennai, India. He is a primary author and coordinator of the Chennai Declaration. I felt this interesting, a document and initiative by medical societies in India to tackle the challenge of antimicrobial resistance from an Indian perspective. He is an advisory and jury member of the Longitudinal Prize. He had the honor to be interviewed by British Medical Journal from the BMJ Confidential as a recognition of the work in the antibiotic policy field. He has delivered an enormous number of lectures in numerous prestigious international infectious diseases and antibiotic policy conferences around the world, and has been published in well-reputed journals such as BMJ, Lancet, etc. He is an editorial board member and reviewer of many international journals. He had received Indian Medical Association Oration Award for his contribution towards tackling antibiotics resistance efforts. And he is a technical advisory committee member for National Antibiotic Policy of Indian Ministry of Health. We are privileged to have you here as a speaker today on a very important topic, sir. Over to you. The screen is yours. Before sir starts a speech, I'd like to tell some announcements. The program is being recorded for academic purpose. So kindly the participants, please mute yourself. And please post your questions in the chat box for the speaker to answer at the end of the session. Over to you, sir, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor, speaker today.
Okay, fine. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. Before the COVID pandemic, AMR was the most discussed about topic in the medical field, international level, and AMR was considered to be the biggest challenge care system was facing. That changed. Now for the last 1 year, the world is trying to tackle COVID. A lot of similarities and dissimilarities between COVID and AMR, and what from COVID we should utilize in controlling the AMR pandemic. In a way, probably we were mismanaging the AMR pandemic, and now we learned our lessons from the COVID pandemic, and now we know how to manage the AMR pandemic. So how did we manage AMR until now? Why couldn't we launch a very successful AMR containment program at global level so far? And how did we succeed in containing the COVID? At least how did we succeed in initiating and maintaining the COVID control efforts at global level? There is AMR is a slow pandemic. It's difficult to convince public policymakers and medical community on how important AMR is. It's very easy to convince public policymakers on how important the COVID is. As another speaker has discussed last month, COVID is a very explosive pandemic, while AMR is a silent pandemic. So it's difficult to convince policymakers and public how important a topic AMR is. We tried our best by giving numbers. Economists got involved. We could succeed in involving politicians and policymakers at national level and international level to an extent. But unfortunately, we could not succeed in getting AMR policies implemented in the country or in many countries, especially lower middle income countries. Now looking back from COVID, it's easy to look back. It's easy how we convince the public and policymakers in controlling the COVID, and what lessons that we learned from the COVID can be utilized for controlling the AMR pandemic. The most important component of controlling the COVID pandemic is the public engagement, public education. Every day, politicians and the leaders and the senior doctors and other scientists come forward and talk to the public. It's Anthony Fauci was talking to the public. It's Trump is talking to the public. The British Prime Minister is talking to the public. Our Prime Minister is talking to the public. Our Health Minister is talking to the public. Our Health Secretary is with the public and the media almost every day. Did that happen with AMR? Have you heard television debates on AMR? Every day we listen to television debates on AMR, on COVID. Every day we read hundreds of articles about COVID. Every day we spend hours in discussing WhatsApp discussions on COVID. Did that happen with AMR? So why couldn't we succeed in engaging the public, especially in India and several other countries on AMR? Public is the most important stakeholder in controlling the AMR. It's the public who go and buy antibiotics over the counter without prescription. It's the public who get admitted into the hospital and should be demanding infection control and antibiotic stewardship, and not the other way. It's the public who has to maintain the sanitation in the community. It's the public who should raise awareness and raise the political momentum, and not just the medical community. It's not the medical community that is more important in controlling the AMR. It's not medical community that's more important in controlling the COVID, which I'm sure you'll agree. The most important stakeholder in the COVID pandemic is public, unquestionable. Same way, the most important stakeholder in controlling the AMR is the public, not the medical community. And why is that? Do you think antibiotic misuse is the most important reason for the generation of AMR? Antibiotic misuse in the hospital is one of the minor components of generation of AMR and one of the minor components of tackling the AMR. Out of the all antibiotic usage in the world, more than 50% of the antibiotics, actually 70 to 80% of the antibiotic manufactured by the pharmaceutical industry is utilized as a growth promotional agent in animal farming. The poultry, the pigs and cattle are fed with antibiotics to make them grow fat and fast. That's called the growth promotional usage of antibiotics. 80% of the antibiotics manufactured by pharmaceutical industry is utilized as a growth promoter agent. Only rest 20% is utilized for human usage. And even among that human usage, more than 50% of the antibiotics are bought by the public over the counter without prescription of the doctors. So if you make a calculation, in my opinion, only less than 10% of the antibiotic are misused by the medical community. The antibiotic misuse could be probably around 8% out of the all antibiotic usage and misuse in human and animal world. And if you try to tackle this 8%, and if you believe that if you tackle this 8% of antibiotic misuse by medical community, and if you believe you can control the AMR, we are in the wrong track. So if you believe we can convince all the doctors by antibiotic stewardship and change the AMR scenario of the world, you're misled. So we need to look into other components as well. That is, over-the-counter sale of antibiotics without prescription. India brought out a rule in 2011 banning over-the-counter sale of all antibiotics without prescription. It was immediately withdrawn. Then we brought out the modified rule called H1, modified H1 rule in 2013, which includes only 24 antibiotics and the 11 ATT drugs. Even that policy is not implemented across the country. Today, almost in every city, in almost every pharmacy, you can go and buy any antibiotic without prescription. The over-the-counter rule is not implemented. H1 rule is not implemented in our country. It's a rule. It's not a circular. It's not an advisory. It's a rule. And if you break the rule, a pharmacy will lose the license. And still, every pharmacy in the country, you can go and buy antibiotic without prescription. Over-the-counter sale of antibiotic without prescription is one of the main areas of antibiotic misuse in the human world, and that is not being controlled in our country. We need antibiotic stewardship in the hospitals, no doubt. But even if you have 100% success in antibiotic stewardship in your hospital, you are just trying to tackle 8% of antibiotic misuse in the world. Even if all hospitals across the world succeed in implementing antibiotic stewardship, you could tackle only 8% of the antibiotic misuse in the world. We need antibiotic stewardship, no doubt about it. Antibiotic stewardship is one of the important pillars in tackling AMR, but one of the many important pillars, not the most important pillar. Yes, the more antibiotic we use, the more resistant bacteria we generate, isn't it? But it's not directly proportional. The volume of antibiotic usage in the country is not directly proportional to AMR. The higher the antibiotic usage, the higher the AMR. That's what we expect. No, the higher the antibiotic usage is not always directly proportional to the high AMR rates. Why is that? It's because there are other important variables determining the rate of AMR. Which are the other components? What are the components more important than the AMR? We should look into other components that helps the bug spread. We should look into community sanitation. A country like India, ESBL is the known Enterobacteriaceae. Carbapenem resistance is so common. Colistin resistance is increasing the community hospital setting. And if you don't follow hospital sanitation, hospital infection control, the bugs spread in the hospital. You may have a good antibiotic stewardship, but much more important is our hospital infection control, especially the hospital sanitation. Again, community sanitation is much more important than antibiotic stewardship. In a country like India, the highly resistant bacteria are already prevalent in the community. Up to 10% or more of the healthy volunteers in the country are carrying carbapenem resistant Enterobacteriaceae in the gut. We did a study 4 years ago, and we found that 8% of the healthy volunteers in Indian metropolitan cities in Chennai and Mumbai carry carbapenem resistant bacteria in the gut. And that is an old study. The prevalence could be several times more today. Bugs are spreading in the water, bugs are spreading in the rivers, streams, and the drains, and contaminating our drinking water, contaminating our irrigation water. Our vegetables are contaminated with resistant bacteria. Our food is contaminated with resistant bacteria. We ingest resistant bacteria that's coming out of the healthcare system, coming out of the hospitals, coming out of the clinics, coming out of the gut flora for the people who consume antibiotic in the community. In India, if you ask me what is the more important component of tackling AMR, it's the community sanitation. The community sanitation is the most important component in tackling AMR. And then the hospital infection control. And then only antibiotic stewardship in the hospitals and over-the-counter regulation come into the picture. All these components are important. Much more important is community sanitation, hospital cleanliness, hospital infection control, and then the antibiotic stewardship in the hospital and in the community. Why is that? Why is the antibiotic usage in a country not directly proportional to AMR? India is one of the largest antibiotic consumers in the world by volume, because we have got 1.35 billion population in our country. But if you look at the per capita antibiotic, per individual antibiotic, you will realize that Americans, Canadians, Australians use much more antibiotic per capita than India. Then why antibiotic resistance is more common in India? The overall antibiotic usage may be more in India, but per capita antibiotic in India is far lower than US and many other European countries. Then why India has such a high AMR rate? It's not just the antibiotic usage. It's not just the overusage of antibiotic. The underusage of antibiotic is equally important or more important than overusage of antibiotic. We know in India, many villages, there is no access to doctors. Public approach the pharmacies directly. They buy antibiotics over the counter. And underuse is actually underuse antibiotic and overuse antibiotic. And you know very well, if you give low dose antibiotics with the bacteria, you just irritate the bacteria and make them resistant. Underuse of antibiotic, 1 day usage of antibiotic, 2 day usage of antibiotic, or amoxicillin, underdosing, take a linezolid once a day for 2 days. These all trigger AMR. So it's not just antibiotic overuse, antibiotic underuse in the country is equally important. It's not just the excess usage of antibiotic, access to antibiotic serious problem. Access to medical access to the doctors is a serious problem in our country, contributing to the AMR. The sanitation issue, the cleanliness of the hospital, the overusage of antibiotic, the inadequate access to antibiotics. These are all major determinants of AMR. Much more than the volume of antibiotic usage, the governance more important determinant. There are plenty of published data. Higher the corruption in a country, the more the usage. Why is that? Why high more antibiotic usage? Even if you have high antibiotic usage, you got low corruption in a country, the AMR rate will be lower. It's a high antibiotic usage, the rational antibiotic usage with a combination of corruption that creates the AMR. You may believe I'm talking politics. I am talking politics because corruption is political term. Higher the corruption in any country, higher the AMR. Lower the governance level. Lower the governance. Inadequate governance is higher the corruption. Higher the corruption in any country, higher the AMR rate. Lower governance level, higher the AMR rate. So it's not just the antibiotic usage that creates AMR. We have to look into socio-political determinants like corruption, governance, sanitation, drinking water, the potable availability of potable water, the infrastructure in the community and in the hospitals. These all determine the AMR rate. That's why AMR is a socio-political challenge and not a scientific challenge anymore. Please don't believe that few doctors like us can change the AMR scenario of the country. Impossible. The doctors can, like us, can educate our colleagues, can change ourselves, but much more important is we can create the momentum by convincing the politicians, by convincing the policymakers on how important AMR is. That is the role of medical community in tackling AMR. It's not the antibiotic stewardship. It's not the infection control. It's not the surveillance. It's not the policy. That's our main role. That's all our role. We are doing it. We have to do it. Our main role is convincing the policymakers and politicians. That's our role. That's what we did in COVID time. We convinced the politicians and policymakers how dangerous the COVID virus is. We convinced the media how dangerous the COVID virus is. We convince the public how dangerous the COVID virus is. We convince the media, we convince the policymakers, we convince the politicians, and then the politicians, policymakers, and media started convincing the public. We initiated the process, but later taken over by politicians, policymakers, media to convince the public. They maintained, they ensured the public participation. This is one area we failed in the tackling AMR in the country and several other countries. This is why I say the AMR, the global momentum of tackling AMR, we lost the momentum. In our country, we lost the momentum because we failed to involve the public. The public, the most important stakeholder of any pandemic, silent pandemic, overt pandemic, public is the most important stakeholder. Because it's the public who change the sanitation scenario. It's the public who take initiative to change the corruption. It's the public is the most important stakeholder. So what is our level of success in India? In 2011, we brought out the national antibiotic policy. It was not implemented. In 2012, we created the Chennai Declaration by medical societies in India, with the participation of all medical societies and many governmental organizations and representatives. And that Chennai Declaration led to multiple high-level meetings with the senior-most government officials in Delhi. We could convince them how important an AMR is. 2011, they brought out the policy. That was probably a knee-jerk reaction to the controversies before that. It was a Chennai Declaration that convinced the highest bureaucrats and politicians in Delhi how important AMR is. We had several meetings, official meetings chaired by Union Health Secretary and other senior-most officials like the Controller General and many other officials. We had documented minutes of multiple meetings. It was initiated by the Chennai Declaration. That was the role Chennai Declaration played. It's not just a paper document. The purpose of the Chennai Declaration was to convince the policymakers and politicians on how important to implement the national antibiotic policy. We succeeded at that time to an extent. At that time, we succeeded. We could create a great momentum at political and bureaucratic level in Delhi. That means the national level to control the AMR. They were all convinced. They all initiated measures. That's why how we brought out the modified H1 rule to regulate over-the-counter sale of antibiotics. Chennai Declaration played a very significant role in initiating the tackling AMR activities in our country. Similar initiatives in other countries, the efforts of other NGOs, the efforts of initiatives, NGOs, countries led to the WHO meeting in 2015 to bring out the Global AMR Action Plan. As per the Global AMR Action Plan, all countries have to initiate National AMR Action Plan by 2017. And then 2016, there was United Nations Political Declaration on AMR. The United Nations for a whole day, presidents and prime ministers were discussing about AMR, a great success. We could involve the politicians, leaders of all countries. That's the maximum we can reach at international level to raise the political momentum. Then 2017, India prepared the National AMR Action Plan. We advised all states to prepare state action plan. So far, 2021, only 3 states have prepared state action plan. Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, and Delhi. They have initiated implementation to an extent. But all these 3 states failed to involve the public. Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, and Delhi failed to involve the public. If I use this sentence a year ago, you may ask me, what is that? Why is that important? Why do you say, why, Dr. Gafoor, why do you say we fail to involve the public? Just compare that with the COVID pandemic. Then we will realize, why do I say? When I was talking about the failure of involving public in 2018 or 2019, people used to ask me 2019, why do you think we failed to involve the public? Today, you will understand how we failed to involve the public. Have you watched media discussions on AMR? Have you watched hundreds of newspaper articles on AMR? Have you watched television debates of AMR? Have you watched our minister, your health secretary, coming to the TV, coming to the newspapers and talking about AMR? No. No. I'm sure you wouldn't be listening to your minister talking about AMR every day in the newspaper, the TV channels. You will not see TV anchors conducting debates on AMR. You will not see or hear public talking about AMR. We had a miserable failure of involvement of public at national level. And even the 3 states, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, and Kerala, who initiated implementation of the state AMR action plan. These 3 states have done some good work in initiating a surveillance network. The states did some good work in conducting AMR educational sessions and generating educational modules, but miserably failed to involve the public. It's a good start. Kerala has created the KARSAP, Madhya Pradesh and Delhi have done the same. Many other states are in the process of formulating state action plan. That's a remarkable failure in my term. The process of formulating a state action plan. After 4 years, we prepared the national action plan in 2017. To me, if you ask me how long you want to prepare a state action plan, more than a month. A state action plan is cut and paste from the national action plan. National action plan is cut and paste from the WHO Global Action Plan. State action plan is cut and paste from the national action plan with modification necessary to the state. You don't need more than 1 month. You don't need 4 years to prepare a state action. By 2021, all our states should have not just prepared the state action plan, should have implemented the state action plan. We have 1-year targets, 2-year targets, 5-year targets. All the states in the country by now should have completed implementation of the second year targets, at least. Second year targets of all components of National AMR Action Plan. Where did we reach? 3 states in paper, some level of initiation of implementation in some of the components, and majority of the states in the country. We have got 28 states today, 9 union territories. Out of that, 3 having paper and some level on the ground implementation of AMR Action Plan. Do you call it a success? I will call it as a disastrous failure in implementation of National AMR Action Plan in the country. We are all responsible for that. I'm a technical advisory committee member of the National Antibody Policy. It's my responsibility as well, even though not directly, because I sit in the but we fail the coordination with state. The National AMR Action Plan Committee, including myself, fail in the coordination with the state. That's why we have such a disastrous failure in implementation of the National AMR Action Plan. I do know by saying so openly, I'm creating controversies, but that is the reality. We can hide the reality. We need to learn from our mistakes if you want to reinitiate implementation of the National AMR Action Plan. If you want to reinitiate the implementation of the Global Action Plan, we need to know where we fail. And this is where we fail. We fail to engage the public. We fail to engage the states. We fail to engage the political leadership of the majority of the states in the country. All states have got hundreds of hospitals who generate antibiogram every month. How difficult is it to formulate it in that state surveillance network? How long do you need? In our state or any state, there are hospitals who generate antibiogram and then it's on the desktop. We all generate antibiogram every month. It's on our desktop. Do you need 1 week? Do you need 1 week to formulate a state surveillance network? 1 week. You can generate network of 50 hospitals in every state in any country. You need only 1 week because the data is already there. You don't need funding for that. Why need funding for surveillance network? The data is already sitting in your computer. Every hospital have dozens of NABH accredited hospitals who generate antibiogram anyway. So why are we waiting for the funding? People say, we don't have the fund for the surveillance. We don't have fund for the state policy. Why do you need fund for surveillance? The data is already on a computer system. Just collect it. And somebody sitting in the capital of the state, one person, one technician with one computer can collect the data of all that state. At least 50 hospitals, one person can do it. And majority of the states don't have a surveillance network. And few states formulated surveillance network. Is it a big success? No. This is a work that we can do in 1 week. We don't need fund. We need salary to be given to one technician and to purchase one computer. We don't need several lakhs of rupees of every hospital for a surveillance network. This is the reason for our remarkable failure. Failure of public engagement, failure of formulation of a network to collect the pre-existing data. We failed. We failed to implement. Hello? A lot of noise coming. Is it because my network is weak?
Sir, some noise is coming when you are speaking. I don't think it is from others.
Really? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, but you are audible, sir. You can continue. You are audible.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So, we failed to involve the public. We failed to formulate state surveillance network. We failed to implement the over-the-counter rule. A lot of hospitals have implemented antibody stewardship protocol. A lot of hospitals have implemented hospital surveillance network. So in a way, we have succeeded in implementing antibiotic stewardship program in all NABH accredited hospitals, at least to an extent. We have succeeded in implementing infection control measures in all NABH accredited hospitals to an extent, at least in our country. What we failed is involvement of the public and in sanitation, surveillance, networking the existing data and existing success. We have hundreds of NABH accredited hospitals in our country with hundreds of NABL accredited laboratories who generate. What is it so difficult to formulate network and chain of hospitals and call it a state policy implementation? What is preventing us from implementing over-the-counter sale of antibiotic rule? When you formulate a state policy, any policy, the first thing that we need to do is implementing over-the-counter sale rule. Why do I say it's first thing? Because a rule is law. A rule is not policy. A rule is not a circular. It's not a guideline. A rule is a rule. Whenever any state implement a state antibiotic policy, the first thing to do is implementation of over-the-counter sale of rule. And if you don't attempt to implement that rule, we are basically not sincere in implementing the national policy. We are not implementing the state policies. The most important thing is implementing rules of controlling AMR. And then comes the policies, guidelines, circulars, and advisories. That's what all states have to do. Implement the over-the-counter rule. It's not difficult at all. People say pharmacists will object. Convince them. The over-the-counter rule involves only 24 antibiotics. It's not difficult to implement. Only 24 antibiotics. Is it difficult to implement? No. You take pharmacists on board, convince them, call the meetings of the pharmacists. They will oblige. I can promise they will oblige. It's just 24 antibiotics. When we prepared the modified H1 rule, we thought it's so easy to implement. But then we could not implement it because the monitoring regulations were so strict. If you don't implement the policy, if a pharmacist sells the drug without following the rule, the pharmacy can lose the license. So, what should we do now? We should instruct all states to implement state AMR action plan. All states should formulate the state AMR action plan. All states should take initiative to implement the over-the-counter rule. All states should formulate a network of surveillance network of the existing hospitals who generate data. You don't need 1 rupee for that. A network of hospitals, NABH accredited hospital, who has got established infection control, antibiotic stewardship. Take initiatives to control the environmental sanitation measures, which is anyway being done by the political system, whether for AMR or not. The environmental measures are already happening for other reasons. You educate the public. You conduct debates in the TV. You write newspaper articles. You involve journalists in the state. You involve the TV media in the state. You are involving the public. You get the help of the state-based NGOs. NGOs who have root network in your state. If you involve NGOs in the state or London or Australia, they're not going to help you in implementing educating the of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Delhi, or Punjab. You need to involve the NGOs who have influence on the people at the local level. You don't need international NGOs for that. Get rope in the local NGOs who has got tens of thousands of volunteers who can help you in convincing the public and implementing the policy. What we need is not namesake big NGOs. What we need is NGOs with ground root level influence on the local public. Involve the NGOs, involve the local public, involve the panchayat presidents, involve the state governance team, involve the district collectors, involve school teachers, involve college teachers, not medical, non-medical college teachers. Educate the public, educate the youth, educate the students. That's how you tackle the AMR. Go and meet your local politicians. And then you will be able to implement the state action plan. If you do that in all the states, we can implement our national AMR action plan. Who should take the initiative? The union government should take the initiative. In my opinion, the union health secretary with the help of a joint secretary should directly coordinate the state AMR action plan, because state health secretaries listen to union health secretary. State health secretaries will not listen to WHO. WHO is a very important partner as an advisory. But states don't listen to WHO because WHO has only got advisory role. At the same time, if the state union health secretary delegate a joint secretary to directly communicate with state health secretaries will listen. The reason why most of the states haven't formulated a state action plan, because there is no direct instruction from the union health secretary. There's no daily update. Nobody has asked for an update. Nobody is asking for an update on how many states are implementing state policies. There's no direct instruction except probably one advisory, one circular. That's not it. We need a joint secretary under union health secretary to directly delegate with all the state health secretaries. If you do that, you don't need 1 month. All states will prepare state action plan and release it, initiate the implementation. If the joint secretary sitting in Delhi ask for updates every month of all the components of AMR from every state will implement state policies. That's how we implement our national AMR action plan. If you do that, we will succeed. If you don't do that, we will fail. If you believe you can control the AMR by conducting a surveillance network and few educational sessions for the doctors, calling doctors, no, that's not how we tackle AMR at the state level or national level. These are all smaller components of tackling AMR. We need to look at the bigger picture. If we lose the bigger picture, if you close our eyes to the bigger picture, the AMR policies will not be implemented. Yes, we can have the self-satisfaction. We doctors conducted a surveillance network. We did educational sessions under the state or the national action plan. But if you don't involve the public, if you don't involve the politicians, we will never ever succeed in tackling AMR in our country or any other country unless we involve the public politicians. They are more important than the medical community. They are much more important than us in tackling AMR. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a detailed discussion on strategies to combat AMR in our country. Sir has discussed the reason. Actually, it was his talk was totally, it is down to the core, how we are, where the problem arises from. Actually, it was totally different, which I myself didn't expect. He discussed the reason why AMR action plan in states failed to achieve. Probably it failed to, the valid reason he gave was it failed to involve the public. Actually, it is the public who has to have the awareness regarding this AMR, and poor network the nationwide. This is one of the lessons probably we learned from the many lessons we have learned with this COVID pandemic. Probably we have learned a lesson how to combat this AMR also. Probably we have to involve the public and the network, and we have to make it like a pandemic, how we are really suffering actually. Still, it stays as a clinician's problem. Rather than it is even a surgeon problem where we have a very worse infection in a post-operative patient not responding to any antibiotic, and we surgeons stays hands crossed calling up an infectious disease specialist or a microbiologist what to do next. Or a sepsis in an ICU not responding at all, and the critical care team stays hand crossed and they don't know what to do next. The patient is going for septic shock and they give all type of antibiotics as far as possible. Hence, what sir has discussed, like it is a national problem, and he has put forth some things also what can be done. Hopefully, sir is in the advisory, so we'll be able to combat this antimicrobial resistance in the forthcoming days. Hope so. With this, thank you, sir, for your elaborate presentation. It was really down to the core which you have presented, which it was very really novel, which we came to know so many things which are happening. We have one suggestion is there, sir, what you have told. Antibiotic without prescription can be controlled. and strict rules can be implemented by nationwide. It is a suggestion from Dr. Dharmalingam, Associate Professor, Department of Pediatrics from AVMC. Over-the-counter sale, as you have also given that strategy to without prescription, it cannot be given, like how we are trying to do with the MTP, like that. And one more question is there, what we can do as a physician to combat AMR? That is a question, sir, from Dr. Mahalakshmi ma'am.
Okay. As a physician, we can self-regulate our own antibody prescription. We can educate our colleagues. Much important, raise momentum outside your hospital. Keep in the media. Talk to journalists. Keep them involved. If you know the politicians, go and talk to them. So if you ask me what is a physician's role, the much more important role is talk to your politicians and talk to media. That's much more important than trying to control the antibody usage in your own hospital. Of course, your backyard. We have to do what we have to do in your hospital. But that doesn't stop anywhere. That doesn't help unless we involve other hospitals, involve politicians and the media.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Of course, we have in our hospital, we have our antibiotic policy. So if we stick on to that antibiotic policy, which myself being a surgeon, I have found out that there is we can combat the antimicrobial resistance. I think that's what you also want to mean. If you follow the universal antibiotic policy in a community of hospitals, so that can be, and that can be regulated also, and that can speak in the law also, that this is our antibiotic policy and that's what we have followed. But still, it is necessary for everyone to stick on to that. Every person in that, every physician in that hospital. I think sir has answered your question, what we can do to combat. And one more question for you, sir. Can you please share some data from India regarding establishment of antimicrobial stewardship in India?
The National AMR Action Plan has given a guideline on how to do that. After that, the government has brought out a guideline on antibiotic. Not only we have given antibiotic recommendation for various syndromes, we also explain how to implement an antibiotic stewardship in all the hospitals in the country. Not the lack of templates. Everybody know how to implement antibiotic stewardship. There's no dearth of recommendations. I can bring out at least a 50 documents on how to implement antibiotic stewardship in the hospital. But we need to get it implemented with the help of the management, with the help of the doctors. We have to utilize all the political, I am repeating the word political strategy. Even if you try to implement an antibiotic stewardship in the hospital, you need to utilize all strategies. It's very easy to prepare an antibiotic stewardship policy in the paper. It's very easy. You need only half an hour to cut and paste from an international guideline. To get it implemented, you need to take everybody on board. You need management in your hand. The physicians, surgeons, gynecologists, everybody in your hand. You need the nurses in your hand. You need your infection control nurses. You need your ward nurses. You need your pharmacists. You need your clinical pharmacists. Everybody should be on board. And always follow the principle of bend but don't break. If you try to be too strict in the beginning, that is a recipe for failure. Always start step by step. Bend the rules. Let people bend the rule initially. Don't let anybody break the rule. People will bend the rule in the beginning. When you try to implement a surgical prophylaxis policy, if you insist for single dose in the beginning, surgeons won't listen. You may, okay, first 48 hours, bring it down to 24 hours, then bring it down to single dose. So always, but don't break. Be diplomatic, people. All strategies, that's probably a topic for another CME. How to implement hospital antibiotic policy. What strategies, what techniques can be utilized to implement antibiotic stewardship policies in the hospitals?
Thank you, sir. Next, we have one more interesting question from Dr. Arun Daniel from Department of Community Medicine. Most TB treatment is from government through RNTCP dots, but still we landed up developing multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, pan-resistant XDR TB. So do you think the irrational use of drug is only to blame? Do you think more pharmacogenomic research would be a part of solution? That's what we want to get clarified.
The irrational usage of ATT has made a significant contribution for the TB. The TB drugs are prescribed by any doctors in the country can prescribe ATT, not CP. Mismanagement of the TB are by the general physicians, doctors. We mismanage TB quite often before we refer the patient to RNDCP. When do RNDCP doctors see the TB patients? After mismanagement by us. We mismanage TB cases first, and then we refer the patient to RNDCP. So yes, antibody misuse has made a TT from any pharmacy in the country without prescription. And when we prepared the after that, probably, even though we could not control antibiotic prescription sale without prescription, some part of the country, especially Maharashtra and Pune area, there's a good regulation on ATT sale without prescription. At least the over-the-counter rule has worked on ATT in some part of the country, even though it has not made any impact on the antibiotic usage. Of course, we need pharmacogenomics. We need research to know the misuse of as I mentioned, in our AMR, misuse of antibiotic is one of the small important factors in controlling AMR. Rationalizing antibiotic is one of the small components in tackling AMR. Just like that, when you come to TB resistance, again, the rational usage of ATT is one of the several components that you have to try to tackle when you try to tackle the TB resistance.
Thank you, sir. I think sir has given the reason behind this multi-drug resistance. That's of course true. Still, we get a patient. I could see patient going and taking AKT4 directly from the pharmacy and things. I think we don't have any more questions. I think so. Okay.
Dr. Deepa, shall I comment? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. One thing is, I compliment Dr. Abdul Ghafoor for giving a different perspective of the whole problem. In fact, we're expecting some scientific talk wherein he will be going into that depth. But a different thing, for we doctors, these kind of insight into the problem from a different, I'll say it will be totally non-medical perspective, like bringing in politicians, those kind of a thing. Being as a teacher, one thing comes to my mind is, how about introducing this antimicrobial resistance? Of course, it might be there in UG PG curriculum. It has, my opinion, it is not given a due emphasis. That is one. And second thing is, we can suggest, especially even in the subjects like political science and all, how these issues will lead to the overall health of the country, these kind of things. So inclusion into, you are at a national level, various committee, and we do, treat the etiology at the root itself, like in the sense. So the awareness or training of the students, be a medical or non-medical, even these can be give some results. So anyway, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a good idea which you have. Maybe we have to include that also in the curriculum to know about antimicrobial resistance before they start writing the antibiotics. As an intern or a post-graduation, they should know about the resistance also. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor, for such a wonderful presentation on AMR today.
Deepa, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, of course, you can ask.
This question is to Dr. Ghafoor. Actually, this declaration was a very powerful document, like which initiated a lot of action. If you remember, Dr. Ghafoor, you had come as speakers. We have been conducting Hospital Infection Control Committee conferences from the year 2009. We did for 3 consecutive years before we got. So one of the things what Dr. Ghafoor had told, that we need networking and sharing of data between the participant institutions. So many NABH hospitals are there. They can just collate that, somebody can collate data from all the colleges or all the hospitals across and then the state level national policy or state level action plan will be ready for AMR. Actually, we sincerely tried to do this activity in Pondicherry. There are 8 medical colleges and 1 institute of national importance in Pondicherry and government hospital which is there. So we said that at least at the academic institutions level, let us come collate the data and see what is the type of organisms, what is the type of AMR resistance, no, and will resist prevalent in our area. So, but unfortunately, you know what we got, no, most of the colleges or most of the hospitals refuse to share their data, and the reason given is this is a publishable data. So, if we give this data to everybody, then we will not have publications. So that was the kind of response we got from academic medical institutions in Pondicherry in our effort to create a network regarding micro. So if you can actually see in the pinnacle of academic existence, the medical college teachers themselves come forward and say this kind of thing. So I'm not very sure how we can actually go ahead and form the state AMR action plans. Over
Did
to
you in
Dr.
Pondicherry,
Gafoor.
ma'am? Did you in Pondicherry? Did you go? Have you prepared the state AMR action plan through the government?
Yeah. No, government actually we suggested that we'll prepare this. Somebody,
The hospitals will not share the data unless there is an instruction from the government. I suggest you all interested parties go and meet the state health secretary after the election. After the election is over, go and meet the state health secretary. Talk to the health secretary on the importance of formulating a state AMR action plan. Talk to WHO coordinator Anuj Sharma is still coordinating, but still talk to health secretary, your own health secretary. Talk to WHO if necessary. Of course, you cannot communicate with the union health secretary without participation of state health secretary. What I suggest you go and meet your state health secretary and convince him or her on the importance of implementing, formulating a state AMR action plan. If the instruction comes from the state health secretary, all these hospitals will share the information because it will be compulsory. You cannot say I won't share the information if the instruction is by the government. So that's why keep the government involved. If the health secretary sent a letter to all the major hospitals in the Pondicherry, within 1 month, you will have antibiogram of all these hospitals to one coordinating hospital. It will happen. One letter from health secretary is enough. People will follow.
actually, we did meet the health secretary, Dr. Raman. He's not a health secretary. I think he's the director of health services in Pondicherry, with a proposal that we will formulate a state level policy and also to chart the resistance and come up with guidelines for antibiotic use for local practitioners. And what has happened was this project was given to the government general hospital and also the government Indira Gandhi Medical College to follow up. And subsequently, we don't know what is the progress of this project because last 4 years, not much has come because I don't think any government regulation or government rule has come that we need to share data. So that project is dormant. That is all I can say.
So all of you have to talk to the DHS and then health secretary if necessary. Again, be patient. You know what I do every day, almost every day, I send a mail to the Union Health Ministry. There's not even a week to send an email to Union Health Secretary or Health Minister or somewhere else. Does it always work? No. But if you keep on sending emails, they will read it. Don't think if you send a mail, the government won't read it. They always read emails. They may not respond it. Most 90% of the times, you don't get a reply. Because they are not allowed to reply. You know that. They can't just reply when you send a mail. But they are reading it. They are discussing about it. You keep on sending mails. If multiple people communicate with the government, see, one advantage of us working in private hospitals, we don't have to follow the food chain. We have the liberty of sending. I can send a mail to Union Health Secretary. At the same time, if I'm a government employee, if I'm working in a government hospital, I can't send a mail to Union Health Secretary. So at least, being in private institutions give us the liberty to communicate on individual capacity. not on the hospital capacity. You know, if you have to go through the hospital route, you have to go through the formal route of talking to your, you know, the food chain. But I work on, I don't work for my institutions. I work on Abdul Ghafoor is sending a mail to the Union Health Secretary, and nobody will say no because you're working on individual capacity. Individuals can play a significant role. The advantage of individuals is that individuals have the freedom, especially individuals in the private network have the freedom to do good things. I'm not saying you need the freedom to do wrong things, but you need to do the freedom to do good things. Utilize that freedom. Communicate with the health secretary. Those microbiologists, infectious doctors, and other physicians in private setup can communicate with the health secretary with the help of IMA and API, involve the medical societies, and keep on talking to DHS, keep on communicating health secretary. It will happen. So I suggest you, all of you, send a reminder communication, reminder letter, email to DHS, and copy to health secretary with the copy minister. It's going to happen. Send 5 emails in a month. It will happen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for you have taken time and you have cleared all the queries also which have been given. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation on a very important topic on AMR. I thank all the participants of today's session for being in time and put forth your queries also. Hope everyone have got yourselves clear. I thank once again the participants. I thank the speaker today, Dr. Abdul Ghafoor. Thank you once again. Myself, Dr. Deepa, signing out, Member Secretary Scientific. Thank you once again. We'll meet in the next FFF webinar next week, next Friday. Next will be a new series. We'll be meeting again.
No, not new series, Deepa.
Okay.
Same series is continuing.
There's a new speaker.
And we have, yeah, new speaker. We have actually Dr. Deshmukh. He's the HOD of Community Medicine, AIIMS, Nagpur. He's going to talk to us about the change in trends in malaria. So that is what is the next week's talk.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. I'll just log out the session. Thank you also.